Valley region. Guess which California region is called astonishing for its geography, incredible for its fertile soil and agricultural output, and pivotal for its role in our state history? If you said the Valley region, give yourself a pat on the back. If you live in the Central Valley, give yourself a shout out now. Woohoo! We live in the Central Valley. A valley needs mountains to surround it. That's what makes it a valley and not a plain. The Central Valley is hugged by mountain ranges. The Coastal Range is the west arm, and the Sierra Nevada is the east arm. But the valley isn't small. At 450 miles long and 40 to 60 miles wide, the region is bigger than a lot of states. Not only is it huge, the Central Valley is super flat. It's flatter than a flapjack, flat Stanley, or a pop balloon. It is so big and so flat that the Central Valley can easily be seen from space. Sometimes called the Great Valley, or even just the Valley, the region is remarkable for its unusual geography, its agriculture, and its human influence. Climate. The Central Valley is really two long valleys lined up end to end, like two centipedes doing the conga. The North Valley, or Sacramento Valley, is half the size of the Southern Valley, the San Joaquin Valley. The Sacramento Valley is not blocked by mountains, so rain can get through. Up to 30 inches of rain falls during the winter months. That is a lot of water for California. The San Joaquin Valley is in the rain shadow zone, which means the coastal range mountains block most winter storms from reaching the valley. The southern end gets as little as 5 inches of rain a year. Not surprisingly, many parts of the San Joaquin Valley are desert-like. Overall, the region averages 20 inches of rain a year. Both sections of the valley experience tule fog in the winter. Named after the tule grass that grows in the area, this thick, dense, soupy fog arrives after the first rain of the season. It can last for 3 weeks at a time and cause many deadly pileups on the freeway. What causes tule fog? Cold air flows in from surrounding mountains and becomes trapped by an inversion layer, where temperatures are reversed. That same inversion layer causes the Central Valley to appear hazy in the summer because now smog, rather than fog, is trapped close to the Earth's surface. Summers in the Central Valley are hot. If you like your temperatures in the 3 digits, the valley in the summer is the place for you. While your friends in San Francisco may be wearing sweaters, you will be in tank tops and flip-flops frying eggs on the sidewalk. With its hot, dry summers and cool, damp winters, it turns out the Central Valley has the perfect climate for grasslands. Pretty awesome if you happen to be a grasshopper. History, geology. Before the Central Valley was settled by Europeans, its perfect climate supported sweeping grasslands, freshwater marshes teeming with life, and riparian woodlands, which are groves of trees near rivers or lakes. It was a wildlife paradise. Thought to have started below sea level, the region was later enclosed by rising mountain ranges. Over thousands of years, rich soil and sediments washed off the Sierra Nevada mountains and were deposited in the valley, slowly filling it like pouring water into a bathtub. Just like the surface of your bathwater before you get in and start splashing around, the valley was incredibly flat for a geographical feature so large. It never rose above 300 feet above sea level, except for Setter Buttes, small mountains that are extinct volcanoes. Before modern dams were built, winter storms frequently turned the Sacramento Valley into an inland sea, making the Buttes an island refuge for California Indians, settlers, and wildlife. That information comes from the Setter Buttes, Maidu Spirits Mountain, California.gov. A vernal pool at Sacramento National Wildlife Refuge in California's Central Valley. Pool. That sounds like a body of water. Before human intervention, the winter rains combined with snow melting from the surrounding mountains and turned the Central Valley into a shallow inland sea. Fertile soil plus rain equaled grasslands, marshes, lakes, and vernal pools. A vernal pool is created when the ground is too hard for water to soak through. The water forms a pool that is surrounded by rings of wildflowers. The Central Valley was very different then. Today, there's only 1% of the original intact grasslands left. The lakes are gone, and so are virtually all the woodlands. The marshes that fed and housed millions of migratory birds are almost gone. What happened? Two things occurred that changed the character of the Central Valley. The first thing was introduction of cattle and sheep by the Spaniards and missionaries. The animals overgrazed the land and brought non-native species of grass in their coats and stomachs. As you already know, everyone poops. The animals would leave deposits of foreign seeds all over the place. Meanwhile, all the native grasses were being gobbled up. It didn't take long for the new non-native grasses to take over. The second thing that happened was called the California Water Project. Everyone knew that the San Joaquin Valley has plenty of room to farm, but it was either flooded or too dry. By controlling the water flow with dams, pump levees, aqueducts, and ditches, land could be used for farming. Wildlife suffered when lakes, streams, and marshes dried up. Pronghorn, elk, and grizzly bears could no longer survive in the valley region. Guess what happened when 95% of the salmon habitat was lost? No more salmon. However, the water projects were called a success. Building the dams gave people jobs, prevented flooding, and meant irrigation or controlled watering to fuel a huge agricultural economy. This is the Shasta Dam in the northern tip of California's Central Valley, one of the most productive regions for agriculture in the country. While the threat of floods are reduced in most of the valley except in the Delta region, there are other environmental problems facing the Central Valley. Dust devils or strong tornado-like whirlwinds carry away precious topsoil. Also, removing too much underground water can cause the earth to become too salty. This leads to a process called desertification, where once rich farmlands turn to desert. Agriculture. Agriculture would become the Central Valley's claim to fame. Huge farms supply the nation with 25% of its food. The Central Valley grows more than 230 crops. Although it is only 1% of the U.S. farmland, its output is astounding. Give credit to fertile or nutrient-rich soil and a long 10-month growing season for much of the Central Valley's agricultural success. So here are some things that California grows. 99% of the walnuts and almonds, 98% of the pistachios, 95% of the broccoli, 92% of the strawberries, 91% of the grapes, and 90% of the tomatoes. You can click on this link for an interactive map of the top crops grown in the Central Valley. Half of the country's fruits, veggies, and nuts come from the Central Valley. Tomatoes, grapes, asparagus, apricots, rice, and almonds in your local grocery store most likely come from the Central Valley. In fact, 90% of the world's almonds are grown right here. Without Central Valley almonds, there would be no Almond Joy candy bars, almond milk, or barbecue flavor almonds to snack on. If you're not hungry while you read this paragraph, you can probably thank a farmer in the Central Valley. What fruit is this? How much is all this food worth? When you add in all the garlic in Gilroy, it is a $17 billion a year industry. If you live in the Central Valley, it is likely you know someone who works in or is connected to the agricultural business. Be sure to tell them thank you for their hard work. This background photo is from the garlic fields in Gilroy, California. And this is the mascot from the Garlic Festival. Fame and recognition. The most famous person from the Central Valley was a man who worked tirelessly on behalf of farm workers. Cesar Chavez wanted to make sure people working in the fields were treated and paid fairly. He organized a group of Mexican American grape pickers into a union called the National Farm Workers Association. It was the first successful farm union in the U.S. Cesar Chavez Day is celebrated on March 31st, a state holiday in California. Cesar started working in the fields at age 10. When he grew up, he fought for racial and social equality for minorities. Like Dr. Martin Luther King, Cesar Chavez believed in nonviolent methods such as strikes and boycotts to get action. When workers refuse to do their jobs, it's called a strike. A boycott is when people refuse to buy a product in order to draw negative attention to a company. Special features. Besides being astonishingly flat, the Central Valley has another special and unique feature called a delta. A delta is the area where a river drains into an ocean. Most deltas start out as one big river and branch off into smaller streams closer to the ocean. From space, it would look like the shape of a tree. The river would be the trunk, and the tributaries or smaller streams would be the branches touching the ocean. This picture shows an inverted delta, and it's along the Sacramento River, which then goes down and turns into the San Joaquin River. The valley delta is unusual and rare because it is an inverted delta. That means a lot of rivers and streams come together and drain into one spot. From space, it would look like the trunk of the tree touching the ocean, and the branches reach inland. From the north, the Sacramento River joins with the San Joaquin River, flowing from the south along their tributaries to flow out to the Pacific Ocean through the San Francisco Bay. Near Sutter's Fort, gold was discovered on the American River, a tributary of the Sacramento River. The California Gold Rush began with a bang. Actually, it began with a shout through the streets of San Francisco, but you will learn more about that later. Thousands of people arrived, and California quickly became a state. The gold country is the home of our pioneer spirit, our diverse population, and our willingness to seek our fortunes. These ships sail 80 miles inland to Sacramento from San Francisco. The delta is big, with 1,600 square miles of waterways. Some are big enough for ships to travel all the way to Sacramento from San Francisco along the Sacramento River. In 1848, the delta was described by a seaman as a labyrinth of such intricacy that unskilled navigators have been lost for days in it. In those days, river travel and transport was conducted by steamboats. Today, cargo ships move produce along the river to seaside ports. This says the 500-foot Golden Bear cut through a West Sacramento canal on its way to make a call to the port of West Sacramento. It looks like it's in the grass. The Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta is the largest brackish estuary on the coast. Brackish refers to a mix of fresh water and salt water. Fresh water flows towards the ocean, but ocean water also flows in towards the rivers. If fresh water levels are too low, too much salt water will flow in and damage the ecosystem. Look at all those animals. Plants, animals, and adaptations. Much of the Central Valley wildlife is centered around wetlands. Wetlands are home to many animal species. Most animals just show up for a tasty drink of water, sort of like a drive-through. Muskrats, however, make their permanent homes in the marshes. Muskrats snack on rushes, cattails, and tulle. These critters not only eat plants, they make their dens out of them too. That's resourceful. Muskrat homes have a very cool feature that your house probably does not have: an underwater entrance. Pretty clever for keeping out uninvited guests, but how would the pizza delivery guy ever find you? Birds love the wet, marshy parts of the Central Valley. Nowhere else in North America do so many birds share such a small habitat. It's just like Disneyland on a summer weekend. Before the California Gold Rush, there were 40 million birds in the Central Valley. If you had lived in the valley in those days, you probably would have wanted to wear a hat whenever you were outdoors. With agriculture taking up most of the Central Valley, many flowers that once carpeted the valley floor have been greatly reduced. The state flower of California, the California poppy, as well as the purple owl clover, still grow in the region. People and culture. The Europeans were not the first people to live in the Central Valley region. For thousands of years before Europeans arrived, several Native American tribes, including the Maidu and Yokuts, lived in harmony with the land. That harmony was destroyed with the arrival of the white men. They brought European diseases that killed most of the Native Americans. The tribe members left were eventually relocated by force onto reservations. It's a sad and shameful chapter in California history. Today, the Central Valley is home to 6.5 million people and is one of the fastest growing regions in the nation. Fresno gets bragging rights for being the largest city. Number 2, Sacramento, gets to be capital of the whole state, which is very cool too. Can you guess the top 3 languages spoken in the Valley region? You probably guessed English and Spanish as number 1 and number 2, but did you know that Hmong is number 3? The Central Valley, like the rest of California, is a diverse and lively place to live. There's the state capital in Sacramento. Where does everybody work? It depends. Many people who live in Sacramento work for the government. They keep the state running properly. Lots of people do work related to agriculture, but there is a newer third group who don't work in the valley at all. These commuters work in big cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco, but live in the Central Valley. Homes are more affordable, and they like the rural lifestyle where people are spread out. There are fewer homes and more farms and wilderness. The downside to this new group of commuter residents is huge traffic jams on the main freeways, Interstate 5 and I-80. Lots of cars bring lots of smog, especially to the San Joaquin Valley. This is a vineyard in the Central Valley that grows grapes. Some say the population of the Central Valley will grow dramatically in the next 20 years because of the nice climate, affordable housing, job opportunities, and recreational fun like boating, hunting, and fishing. Visitors love to explore Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Park for the stunning forests, wineries dotted through the region, and stopping at farm stands for just pick fruits, vegetables, and nuts. The Central Valley or Valley region of California is a fascinating place of continuing change, geographical significance, and agricultural output. Its future is a question of balancing protection of the environment with producing food for our country. You will be a part of making decisions for all of California regions and what the kinds of places they will become in the future.